week I stopped covering for everyone, my numbers went up. That's the part that still gets me. For 3 years, I'd been holding a whole department together with two hands, and a lot of late nights. And the first time I let one thing drop on purpose, nothing broke. It got quieter. It got better. I was not brave about it. I was just tired in a way sleep didn't touch. It started 3 years earlier, ordinary as anything. I was the operations coordinator for a team of about 40. On paper, that means I kept the schedules, the vendors, the little systems that let everyone else do the fun part. Off paper, it meant I was the guy you slacked at 9 at night when something was on fire. My manager loved that about me. She'd swing by my desk, drop something impossible in my lap, and smile like she was handing me a gift. "You're the only one I trust with this," she'd say. Every time. Same 7 words. I used to feel taller when she said it. She wasn't a monster. She was a mess. Meetings with no agenda. Decisions she'd reverse by Thursday. A calendar that looked like a dropped plate. And every crack in that, I quietly filled. Nobody asked me to. Actually, that's not quite true. I asked for the first one myself, back when it still felt like being trusted. Within a year, I'd gotten so good at catching things that nobody, including me, could see how much I was carrying. It grew the way these things always do. One favor at a time. First, it was covering for one person out on leave, reasonable. I picked up their vendor calls for a month. Then the month ended and the calls stayed mine. Because I'd done them well. And doing something well is how you get to keep it forever. Then a big client account went sideways, and she pulled me in just to stabilize it. I stabilized it. It became mine. No title change. No pay change. Just a new thing that lived in my inbox at all hours. By spring, I was running 3 jobs and getting paid for one. The invisible kind of 3. Nothing you could point at in a review. Because none of it had my name on it. It had her name on it. I was the engine under somebody else's dashboard. There was a woman on my team who'd been there 15 years. She used to have my job, more or less. Now she came in, did exactly what was asked, and left at 5 on the dot. People called her checked out. I called her checked out too, in my head, with a little judgment I'm not proud of. I thought I was the committed one. The Slack pings didn't stop. 9 at night. 10. Once at midnight, a quick sync. Invite for 7 the next morning about a fire that turned out to be a typo in a spreadsheet. I fixed the typo. I went to the 7 a.m. meeting anyway, because she'd be there, and being there was how you stayed the only one she trusted. The worst one came in an all hands. 200 people on the call. She said my name. Then said I'd love to own a new reporting process on top of everything else. I found out I loved to own it at the same moment 200 other people did. I smiled at my webcam. I said, sure. My badge scanned me into the building at 6:40 the next morning like nothing had changed. Because nothing had. By then I was keeping a second to-do list, the real one. The one that never fit inside the hours they actually paid me for. It had its own tab on my screen. I never showed it to anyone. Showing it would have meant admitting the math didn't work. And every time I delivered, same reward. That smile. Those 7 words. I'd started to hear them differently by then. It wasn't a compliment. It was a leash with a bow on it. But that wasn't the thing that broke me. The thing that broke me was smaller, and it was mine. Somewhere in there, I stopped sleeping right. Nothing dramatic. I'd wake at 3 and do math. If I'm doing the work of 3 people, what am I actually worth? And why does my bank account disagree? I'd lie there stacking up the resentment brick by brick, and then get up and answer her 9 p.m. Slack at 6 a.m. Anyway, like a good dog. I told people I was fine. My hands said otherwise. I'd started chewing the skin around my thumbnail raw again, a habit I'd kicked in college. It came back without asking. The worst part wasn't the work. I want to be precise about this. The worst part was that I'd started to believe the whole thing was fair. That if I was the only one who could hold it all, then holding it all was just who I was. I'd taken her chaos and filed it under my personality. I was proud of being indispensable. And pride like that is just a nicer word for a trap you decorated yourself. And I'd like to say I didn't see it coming. That would be the easier story. But there was a Tuesday, I think it was a Tuesday, when she thanked me for saving an account. And I felt nothing at all. Just a gray hum where the pride used to be, like a TV left on in an empty room. Some part of me had already quit. It just hadn't told the rest of me yet. The night it turned wasn't a big night. 9:40, a Slack from her. A report due the next morning that she'd forgotten to assign to anyone, which by the physics of the place made it mine. I opened the file. I put my hands on the keys. And I just didn't. I sat there. I stared at the empty space where the typing should have been. I thought about the 15-year woman leaving at 5, and how I judged her, and how she looked rested, while I looked like a photo of myself left in the sun. I closed the laptop. I didn't send a message. I didn't explain. I went to bed with the report undone, and I lay there braced for the ceiling to come down. One report, left in the dark overnight. That was the size of my rebellion. It felt less like courage and more like a muscle finally giving out. But it counted. It was the first no I'd said in 3 years, and I said it to a closed laptop. Morning came. The building did not. The report was late, and the world absorbed it the way the world absorbs almost everything. With a shrug. She pinged me at 9. Where are we on the numbers? I typed something I'd never typed before. Didn't get to it. I was at capacity. Those last 3 words had scared me for years. At capacity. No, so sorry. No up all night on it. Just the fact, with no apology stapled to it. Then I did the thing that actually changed everything. And it wasn't dramatic either. I opened a blank doc and wrote down every single task I did that wasn't my job. Every account I'd stabilized. Every fire I'd caught. Every quick favor that had quietly moved in and never left. It ran 2 pages. 2 pages of work with nobody's name on it. Mine, invisibly. I brought those pages to my next one-on-one. The one she'd rescheduled twice, which felt about right. I didn't complain. I didn't raise my voice. Anger is a terrible negotiator anyway. It wants to be right more than it wants to win. I set the 2 pages on the table and I said, here's what I'm actually holding. We need to decide together what I keep. Because I can't keep all of it and do any of it well. That sentence did more than 3 years of late nights. Now the work had a shape, sitting there in black and white. She tried to smile anyway, out of habit. It just sat there on the 2 pages, and the pages didn't smile back. Here's where it almost fell apart. The 15-year woman had told me, weeks earlier, in the break room over the world's worst coffee, when you finally push back, come find me, I'll back you up. So the morning of the meeting, I stopped by her desk and asked if she'd sit in, just to say the load was real, that she'd watched it grow. She looked at her screen. She said she wasn't sure it was her place. She didn't look up again. I walked into that room alone, holding 2 pages and a promise that had already evaporated, with no idea if I was about to fix my job or end it. So I did it without her. And the strange part is, alone might have been better. There was nobody to hide behind. Just me, the list, and a manager who, for the first time, had to look at the actual size of what she'd been handing one person. She went quiet. She moved things around on the pages with a pen. By the following week, 2 of the 3 jobs had other people's names on them. Not because she'd grown a conscience overnight, because I'd made it impossible to keep pretending the work belonged to no one. You already know the weight is real if you're the one holding it all together right now. So I'll skip the pep talk and give you the smaller, truer thing instead. You're not imagining the weight. Being good at your job really can be the reason they bury you in it. You're not paranoid for feeling it. Competence with no fence around it just keeps attracting more, until the reward for handling everything is more everything. You didn't do anything wrong by being reliable. And the part you get to change is smaller than you think. The move is quieter than quitting and simpler than some big speech. It's making the invisible visible. On paper, out loud, in a room. Chaos runs on staying unnameable. The second you can point at the whole shape of what you carry, it stops being your private burden and turns into a problem the two of you have to solve together. A boundary isn't you being difficult. It's you finally telling the truth about your own capacity. Mine was 2 pages long. Yours might be 1 line. For 3 years, I thought the loyal move was to absorb everything and never make a sound. I had it backwards. The silence had felt like loyalty. Mostly, it just hid whose hands were actually on the work. Start this week. Skip the speech and build a document instead. Open a blank doc. Write down every task you handle that isn't in your job description. The favors, the fires, the meetings nobody actually assigned to you. Don't soften it. Let the list be as long as it really is. Then carry 1 sentence into your next one-on-one. Here's everything I'm currently holding. Let's decide together what I keep, because I can't do all of it well. That's the whole move. You're not asking permission to have limits. You're putting the map on the table and making them read it with you. I'd love to tell you I became a legend for it. I didn't. Something cooled between me and my manager after that. I wasn't the golden one anymore. The only one I trust smile went to somebody newer. And some weeks I'd catch myself checking Slack for a message that wasn't coming anymore. Being needed that badly is its own kind of drug, and I'd been using for years. But I left at a reasonable hour. I did the work I kept, and I did it well. And for once it had my name on it. The 15-year woman and I still don't talk much. I understand the leaving at 5 now. I'd taken it as her checking out. Turns out it was a fence, one she'd built after learning the same lesson I did, probably alone, probably the hard way. The chaos didn't disappear. My manager is still a mess. But it's her mess again now. Spread across the people it should have been on all along. And I sleep through most nights. My evenings belong to me again. I cook now. Badly, but I cook. It doesn't sound like much of a victory until you've gone 3 years without one. So, let me ask you something, and I'll go first. The moment I knew it had gone too far was that gray hum when she thanked me, and I felt none of it. That was mine. What's yours? The moment you realized being indispensable had quietly stopped being a compliment. Put it in the comments. I'll be the one down there reading, not a moderator.